we have a very, very interesting panel now about VC, like venture capital in Web3, which is something new coming up now. I guess it's the beginning of a big and long history of venture capital. We're going to talk about investments. So how money is going to come into this market. At the beginning, in crypto, money came from retail, which are like individual people who buy a token and hope it goes 100x up and normally goes 100x down. And now more professional investors are coming in. This completely changes the dynamic. It's a part of the growth of an industry, of course. I would say maybe, no, there's been investments, of course, in the last years, but this year is when, well, maybe, okay, we have cycles in crypto. You know, there's moments in which we are geniuses, and then the next day we are idiots. You know, when everything crashes and Bitcoin goes from 70 to 15, we are the idiots. And then when it goes back up, we are the geniuses. Right now we are in the idiots era, even if sometimes it looks like we're going to go back to genius, but then it crashes again. Anyway, VCs have a longer view on this. So I want to invite on stage Maksim, please, who is not an investor, but has experience in, I would say, or OG crypto raising, like ICOs. Mike Sung, please, from Plug and Play. Cynthia from Dtravel. Sam Simmons from Dream Ventures, our sponsor, VC and angel investor too. Blaser from Falkenstein Ventures, venture capital from Germany. We invested in Chain for Travel. All right, guys. Well, let's start from this. We had this cyclic crash. We had this big, crypto crash. FTX went bust, and then everything else went down. Tokens lost 99% of the value, and then they lost 99% again. And what is the situation today in what is how did these things change compared to when we were in the bull run, right? So in the bull run, it's kind of easier to invest, I suppose. It's kind of easier to raise money to invest. What changed? Let's simplify this. What changed after FTX crash, after the bubble burst? I would say we start with Beat, please. Oh, yeah, sorry. There you go, yeah.
Hello. So for us, we are not a typical VC. We are more of a bunch of investors, GPs. And we are specialized in travel and hospitality. And we are not really affected from crypto crashes. We are mainly interested in groundbreaking new business models on blockchain in Web3. So, and personally, I believe it has been good that we have had a bunch of crashes. It's built out all of the thrash, and it's a good fertile ground now to find investments. And probably there's some very interesting investments opportunities here in the room.
Are you more on the angel side? Are you more? How could you describe yourself in this context?
A little bit of everything. So I myself have been angel investing in travel businesses for the past handful of years, and then I guess more recently degenning into the crypto side of things, especially in the world of NFTs. And I'm trying to harness those two passions, let's say, in this Web3 travel world. So it's an honor to be here to be able to talk about it as somewhat of a newbie and not an OG in this world. All that being said, I think a lot of us would agree that the past few years leading up to, not only FTX, but Three Arrows, Luna Terra, like a lot of the nonsense of last year, a lot of it could be categorized by speculation. I think a lot of people were betting heavily on the future value of these assets. And very quickly, when panic ensues, people start to realize as money moves away and liquidity vanishes into more safe haven assets, that the perceived value and the perceived future value doesn't really exist. And we see prices tumble because of that. So with Dream Ventures, we're a generalist fund, so we invest in a lot of different stuff with Web3 and travel, both separately and together being verticals that we're interested in. We believe in use case. And I think that's, as a sort of counter to speculation, that to me is where we find an answer to a lot of the volatility in the space, is focusing on user experiences that provide real value that are made possible by Web3 technology. And that's what we're here to do today. So really happy to be here.
Cynthia, you are on the other side. You are on the receiving side of investments. What is your take?
The dark side. I'm just joking. Yeah, I think as a builder, it's really interesting because you, as you were talking about, you go through these cycles, right? And what happens is when we're in a bear market, that's where the true building happens. And it's funny because I feel like a lot of the things that we talked about in the last bear market were saying the exact same things, right? So these cycles look very, very similar. You have this crash and it's like, oh my God, what is this? You become relegated to the corner as like the weirdo. And then a bull market happens, and like you said, you're the winner, and so everybody calls you. They're like, "Hey, I heard you're in crypto. You know, like, can you tell me more about Bitcoin and Ethereum?" And then a crash happens, and again, you're like the loser in the corner. So I totally agree with that. But what is really interesting from the builder side is, and this is not just Web3, but Web2, you have this like mass panic to hire a lot of people and to push out a lot of stuff, and a lot of stuff is garbage, because you are forced through competition, through a lot of funding and a lot of easy money to basically try and move as fast as possible, but you're not making the best decisions. And so the best products actually happen in bear markets, because that's when all the value is created. That's when the true builders are actually in the space building. And then what happens is in the next bull run, that's when those companies become massive. And so kudos to everybody still here while we're in a bear market. But I think it is really interesting because what happens is, like, when you go from a bull market to a bear market, you grow at all costs. And so you spend a lot of money, you hire a lot of people, and then a bear market happens, and you kind of have to like shed those people really quickly. And that's, I think, really challenging from a founder perspective, because you're almost like forced into these cycles that you don't want to be a part of, but it's sort of the reality, because if you're not doing it, everybody else is doing it, so you kind of get left behind. So hopefully as this industry matures, I'm hoping that we learn from these things and we don't go through the same perpetuation of these cycles. Yeah. Okay,
thank you. Mike, maybe a couple of words on plug and play, and then your take.
Sure. So plug and play, which I'll talk a little bit more about. You know, we're an investor as well. We're early stage startup VCs. We also help global suppliers and on the travel space with their corporate innovation. But I'll just talk a little bit about, I guess, travel and kind of crypto and digital assets. Interestingly enough, we launched our 20th program, which is crypto and digital assets, in November. But we've been involved in crypto since 2016. And this is a lesson learned for us, actually, because we left crypto when 2017, 2018 happened. So when that happened, we were like, okay, hey, this is not a space we need to be in right now. It's too risky. It's too volatile. There's a lot of regulatory concerns that's not clear. We don't know how to play in this space. None of our corporate partners is interested. They're all taking a step back as well. So we took a step back as well, right? But we did launch the program, a lot of engagements. We're working with companies like Alliance Block, Visa, MasterCard, et cetera, a lot of the fintech side of things, some on the travel side as well. So we've been investing. But I would say overall, the VC landscape has changed. You really need to set your expectation in terms of what your valuation is at right now. So if you look at the Q2 landscape to right now, there's been a dramatic pullback. Although there's still capital being deployed for innovative startups, you have to also put yourself in the seat of the VC, you know? So a lot of them are telling their startups to be more efficient. They're in kind of this default or live mode, if you kind of have an idea what that means. Essentially is make sure you have a clear runway to survive for the next 12 months or so. At the same time, they're also taking care of their procos, their portfolio companies, right? So if they need to buff them, if they need to help them with bridge rounds, et cetera, they need to help them survive as well. But on the startup side, you really, if you're going into a VC meeting, be ready for questions as to, first of all, why blockchain? Right? A lot of times you need to be able to clearly explain that. You know, if you're trying to solve a problem, why can't a legacy solution take care of that problem? Why do you need blockchain? If you can't articulate that, you're going to have a problem, right? Second, you need to be ready to talk about your efficiency. So when they ask about like operational efficiency, that's code for cash flow management. Are you reducing your staff? How are you managing your burn rate? What is your runway? Do you have If you have less than 3 months, you're going to be in trouble, right? Are you having your existing VCs, your existing investors supporting you? If they're not, you're kind of in trouble as well. But at the same time, there is capital being deployed. We've actually invested in 3 startups just on the travel side alone in the last 3 months. On the overall scheme of things, we are looking to invest about 250 startups for this year across the 20 industries that we service. So there is capital to be deployed. So I don't want to paint the entire picture to be bad, but definitely recognize the overall macro condition. You talked a little bit about SVB earlier. I actually had a really interesting conversation with one of a travel tech, not on the Web3 side, but they're very disruptive and they have great traction. Their pipeline is huge, but he's having a hard time raising. He was literally in a meeting room with a bunch of VCs in Saudi, was ready to sign the term, and SVB news happened, and everything got delayed, right? So here's the interesting fact just to share with everybody, maybe to kind of set like expectation. You heard about what's happening in the US in terms of Silicon Valley Bank, First Republic, et cetera. That's kind of, in my opinion, based on what I'm seeing, is the tip of the iceberg, right? So the Fed, the US Fed put out a report in April. The data is about 2 months late. It actually was data till about February. There's 722 banks, regional banks in the US that is having similar distress. So with all of this happening, a lot of VCs, if one of the biggest thing I would say is if they're really interested, the due diligence is going to be a lot tighter compared to where it was a year ago.
Thank you. Just before Maksim, to draw a parallel with what happened in the crashes in crypto, what's happening in the crashes in the banking sector, it's like, imagine if when there's a crash in crypto, the Bitcoin CEO starts pumping Bitcoins in the system and everything looks fine. That's my take of the financial sector. It's very easy to hide the 700 banks, which should be dead by now. They're not dead by now because in some way or the other, some liquidity is put into it, right? Crypto is much more honest and brutal in these terms, okay? And not only crypto crashes, right? Maksim, what's your take?
So I'm just going to talk about my personal experience, I guess. One of my companies, with one of my companies, we're raising money currently, and yeah, definitely, you know, all of those FTX, SCB, and stuff like that. And I, you know, from my friends in crypto or outside of crypto, it's a bit of a conundrum right now to raise money. Of course, everything is delayed, and you're saying there's money. I haven't seen it, or rather, people talk about it and they say they're interested, but very, very hard to raise money right now. That's sort of the current conditions, I guess. Outside of sort of this crisis, and of course it affects us all. I don't know how many people are here in crypto, but I guess if you're investing into stock or in crypto, it doesn't matter. You know, if things are going up, you feel rich, you're like, okay, let's do this, invest in this one, invest in that one, right? Yeah, even if things are going good, to me, sort of, I have my own simplification of how to deal with investors. It's like dating, sort of, right? They never tell you, that's my experience, they never tell you the real reason. You know, they always say, hey, it's me, it's not you. So you never know what really is going on. Without feedback, it's very hard to survive and sort of improve. I recently, well, a couple of months ago, I had a call with a guy, and everything seemed to be great, and big fund out of San Francisco. And then he said, oh, you know, this concerns us, and therefore it's a pass. And I'm like, we didn't even discuss this. Let's have a call. Let's talk about this stuff. No response whatsoever. Again, maybe it's the market, it's downturn, right? So yeah, it's about dating, and the key, it's like dating, talking to investors, and the key here is just like in dating. What they say in Y Combinator in Silicon Valley, the best time to raise money is when? When you don't need it. That's the best time to raise money. And so that is the paradox that it's absolutely crazy. You know, you have a new idea, and VC is venture capital, right? It's by definition supposed to be risk capital. but the majority of money goes into proven sort of business models, or rather for growth, for scale-ups. So investors do that. There are other, of course, signals that you can send to investors that lead to complete disasters sometimes, like Theranos and stuff like that. So it's a funky landscape. I don't know. It's a very complicated topic. Yeah.
No, I'll add to that.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Maybe just a few tips for everybody. If you're trying to go after funds and getting investment from funds, and maybe you've already done this as well, but figuring out who the GPs and LPs are could be interesting. Figuring out what areas they're focused in, what their interests are, that could be another way to tackle it also. But that's just a suggestion maybe as well. But yeah, in terms of just overall landscape, I think it's super important for us to, or at least from the startup side of things, to really do the research also. If you understand if you're trying to go after, let's say, A16Z, right? If you're trying to talk to Chris Hemmeter, et cetera, from Thayers and so forth, figure out who they're investing in, why they're investing into it. So you can kind of align the value of why they're investing and when, and then try to use that to your advantage. But the landscape is pretty difficult right now. Another tip maybe is to, maybe you have to look at your valuation a little bit differently than a year ago. It's completely changed. So if you're open to adjusting, that's another area to consider as well, because there is discounts that's happening right now. So
thank you, Mike.
There's people they may be more susceptible to say, look, we want you on our cap table because we recognize the brand. That may open doors for others as well. So, but.
Well, thank you. This is actually the next question. I'm going to go back to Beat. What is the most compelling use case for a Web3 startup, Web3 travel company today? What would you invest in? What use case is exciting for you?
Can I just add something to what you just said?
Yeah,
maybe as a tip to the startups, adding to what Cynthia said, there's a lot of jargon, a lot of words, a lot of complexity, which is being used. And just adding to what you said, Mike, so I think if you're pitching your idea, try to pitch it so that my mother understands. So sometimes people are pitching their idea and I'm saying, what the fuck are they explaining here? And at the end of the day, it's all about use case. It's all about simplicity, and you always can add more complexity. But don't start with the complexity. Pitch it like my mother understands, or your mother understands. That's probably a good way to, especially now.
So, yeah, you want to add something? Go ahead. Yeah.
Say also, if make sure you have different decks, right? Sometimes we'll get a commercial deck versus an investor deck, or we'll get an investor deck versus a commercial deck, and you need to make sure you have at least two different, specific decks, presentations.
Right. Thanks for the tips. So, Beat, use cases. Is there anything interesting? What kind of problem are we going to solve with Web3 in travel, which you find interesting?
Well, maybe to start with, I've been in a travel company, in a tour ops company, and they have had a legacy technology, 50 years old or something, or 40 years old. So the developers, they were dying, really dying out. So there was maybe one or two guys in the cellar. Nobody has, most of the people never saw them. And the company has built some 400 systems. So the system was called Nurvis and Friends. It was called. And the Friends were 400 systems built around this legacy system. So can you imagine the complexity? So Michele knows from Alpitour, and all of the tour ops guys know from tour ops. So, and coming back to your questions, I think there's few cases I can't think where blockchain can play an important role, and just to take out complexity. And I think to start with, loyalty is definitely one of my preferred ones. I see a lot of companies struggling with their loyalty programs. Obviously, why? When you have 300 systems, they need to talk to each other. How the hell should that work? So I think loyalty is very striking, and it doesn't take a lot, right? It just needs to be a little bit better than the existing systems. So loyalty at the moment is probably my preferred one. And I have a lot of fantasies about trading. So Michele just presented the trading platform. So just imagine when C2B, customer to business, start to trade and do stuff. And obviously also, I believe that identity will be a really important one going forward, like Pablo just said, like digital identity, CBDCs, etc. As much as probably most of us, well, I'm not in favor of a CBDC, but I think identity will be an important one.
Thank you. Sam, what's your take?
Yeah, just to quickly circle back on the tips that were shared earlier. I think all of that is true, and this will kind of segue into the larger answer here. But thinking about especially in 2021, we found ourselves getting pitched a lot like insert really successful Web2 business, but make it Web3, and that's like the core pitch. I think in general, at least from my perspective, Web3 is an answer to a problem more than it is the solution itself. Like Web3 needs to be integrated and built for the purposes of alleviating some friction point that exists today in the world of Web2. And I think that's where a lot of the complication comes into play, because just over-engineering a solution to a problem that doesn't exist, and then at that point, you don't really have a business there other than just an overcomplication amalgamation of different tech that actually does nothing for anyone. So I guess that's my tip. But back to the whole matter of use case. So as I was investing more in this world, I got heavily into angel investing. I've been doing so since like 2017, 2018, but really started to hammer travel in 2020 when people thought I was an idiot for investing heavily into travel during COVID. And in reality, there was a lot of inspiration that came for me out of that time period in people not being able to travel. When you consider, I think we all took travel for granted for the years leading up to COVID. And then the second that we're all of a sudden not able to travel, I think many of us realized how much of our identity we assign to the places we love to visit. And by not being able to visit those places, we lose a part of our identity in the process. So how can we bridge that gap for the years to come and make travel an immutable part of your digital identity? So thinking about how Web3 unlocks that potential of pairing your IRL travel experiences to that digital presence in a way that allows you to have digital experiences with people that share in that passion, or to connect with others digitally to form global communities around a shared love of this passion and interest. And frankly, as a clout mechanism. I think that there's a social status that comes with travel experiences that is confined to the inauthenticity of Instagram and other social platforms today. So how do you create a proof of record for your experiences that serves as not only social proof for today, but legacy going forward? I think that, to me, obviously there's like a lot of infrastructure stuff and bookings and the stuff that's already been talked about today, but thinking about like the emotional aspects of travel, I'm super interested in myself.
Cynthia. Oh, you're gonna skip this one?
Well, I just thought it was more for the...
All right, go ahead, no problem.
You can,
not forced, don't worry.
I'm gonna have a bias.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Actually, I think this concept of like use cases and blockchain not being a solution, or sorry, not the tech for tech's sake. So this is something we talked a lot about in 2017, 2018. You'd go to conferences and people would be like, yeah, I'm the Uber with Web3. I'm the whatever with Web3. And at the time, it was like, that's dumb. You don't need blockchain for everything. And it makes everything really inefficient, right? And tech back then was different. But I have not heard people talk about that for the last like 2-3 years. Ever since DeFi Summer, no one has said, oh yeah, you don't need blockchain for that. Now it's like blockchain everything, token everything. And I don't agree with that, because there's a lot, or like DAOs everything, right? DeFi everything. Like we've kind of moved away from the ethos of you don't need decentralization for everything. You don't need tokenization for everything. You don't need NFTs for everything. And I think we need a little bit more of that practicality back into this industry, where people are taking a really critical lens and saying, why do you need blockchain? Is there a solution that can be solved without blockchain, and why? And even though I'm a true believer in Web3, I think that there's a lot of things that doesn't need blockchain. And so maybe that's like my contrarian opinion, especially being in Web3. But yeah, I think it would be better for us to make that distinction instead of everything being Web3.
Right. Thank you. Mike.
So I alluded to, at least from the travel program side, that we invested in 3 startups this year. One is in the social influence space, based out of South Korea, looking to penetrate the Western market. We're pretty excited about them just based on the attraction and number and the stickiness that they have. So, but obviously we also recognize that, you know, in APAC, super apps is more known from a use perspective and not as much in the West. So there's obviously going to be a little bit of a barrier, but we believe that they can make it happen. So it was an early bet. Another one, not as much in travel Web3, but definitely travel. I would say probably Web 2.5 is because the solution is very like hospitality metaverse related. So we're pretty excited about what they're doing. And this comes out of some, I guess, a kind of a secret sauce, if you will, with Plug and Play from an investment perspective. Because we work with a lot of corporate travel companies, hotel companies, airlines, airports, etc. So a lot of times when we see there is engagements either through POC, pilots, commercial agreements, so forth, that kind of give us a line of sight to, hey, there's something here. Our corporate partners are engaging, they're adopting, so it gives us that first line on that front. The third one is definitely Web3. So it's a travel digital identity solution startup. Pretty excited about them just in terms of how they started based on their engagement with government regulators. And we saw the adoption from that side. So that was pretty good to see. Personally, I'm looking at infrastructure platforms. So platform that's going to be able to kind of bridge the gap between TradeFi and DeFi, if you will, or even from an investment side of things. So one that I personally invested in was INX Digital. They help with security token offering raises. And they are actually one of the first companies, startup, if you will, that was kind of in stealth for about 900 days, getting all the money transmitter licenses, all the SEC registration, everything like that in place. The players are traditional finance, been in the space for a long time. But what they actually done is the right way. They saw what happened during the ICO boom, right? It was the Wild Wild West. But then they said, hey, let's go ahead and do that because we see there's something here, but let's do it with regulators in mind. So they're actually the first security token. They themselves raised, I think, out of 7,500 holders, they raised like 85 mil, I think. And they're the first SEC registered security token offering. And then they're now doing it for others as well. So brands, companies, they actually launched, I think it was with a company called Greenbrier. They took a piece of their public stock, sliced it, and then turned them into security tokens. So
Interesting.
24/7, 365 tradability.
Wow. Okay. Maksim.
It's not a contrarian opinion. Again, a totally Bitcoin maxi kind of opinion is VC investing and Web3 are incompatible, in my opinion, right? If there is a company that takes investment, therefore they're bound by fiduciary duty to, again, put that thing that creates the maximizer, right? That is your only job is to make money to this guy right now who just gave me money, right? It's your only job. And again, that principle of fiduciary duty means that you cannot act in any other way. Again, the principle of fiduciary duty states that you have to act as director of that company in such a way as to increase the return on investment of the person who gave you money or the fund, right? It gets even more interesting because, all VCs, they have their own investors, the LPs and stuff like that, if you're not an angel or something, right? That is, they are bound to select projects that will only make money. And, to me, I got inspired by really the selfless act of Satoshi Nakamoto, who there are no strings attached. There is no karma attached to it, right? Here's the thing, use it or not, I don't care. And I don't have time to educate you about it. If you want to, go for it. If not, you don't have to, right? And it's a huge, for me, Web3 and Bitcoin, and to a lesser extent, I guess, Ethereum and maybe a few other projects, very few, are instruments for empowering of the individual, right? Or again, in cases of DAO, and again, maybe very limited cases, instruments for empowering communities, right? And I haven't solved that conundrum. And to me, it's almost automatically, and I know that I'm criticizing, most projects here. To me, it immediately puts you into a category of Web.25, which again, I know you believe in that, and I have friends who are building that, and who am I to tell you what to do, right? Again, power to you. I believe in permissionless innovation, I guess, right? So maybe I'm wrong. Hopefully I am wrong, but in my opinion, again, it puts you into category of Web 2.5. That is, hey, let's not educate the user about all the implications of what they're doing right now, and actually, they don't own their own private keys, and therefore, I mean, it's a 0 to 1 kind of problem. If you don't own the private key, well, what's the point? Then, to your, Sam, what you said, just take a database. And, I had this experience with companies, big companies that I consulted back in 2017 and stuff like that. I was pitching to their board of director this whole concept of, hey, this is a blockchain, it's about ownership, it's blah, blah, blah. And they said, we like it, with a German accent. I imagine that. We like it, yeah. But yeah, we're going to do it with a private blockchain. I'm like, you literally didn't understand anything what I just said to you. Just take a SQL database and build that. It's going to be cheaper. It's probably going to work for whatever use case you're trying. They're like, no, yeah, we're going to do it. Where is that project? Nowhere, absolutely. And so again, I'm not trying to say that I'm, again, truth in the last instance, but there are certain principles that we have to follow here, right? And I believe in projects that are built on top of Web3, blockchain powered, blockchain enabled, absolutely. But calling them Web3 projects, there's just this fine line. What are we saying? When we say Web3 project or Web3 investing into Web3, what does that mean exactly? So maybe, again, we could define that a little bit better. But to me, a friend of mine, hello, maybe he'll watch it later, he's building a layer 2 solution that is, and again, all of those layer 2, they claim to be, we're gonna be the world's computer, the world's computational engine, and anyway, it's gonna be decentralized, it's gonna be blah, blah, blah. By the way, we raised 400 million from Mark Andreessen, or A16Z, right? And I'm like, how do you connect those two things? I don't want my computer, world's computer, to be owned by a VC and censored and, limited in ways that I will never understand. So that doesn't quite make sense to me. I argue with my friends about that sometimes, but we'll see. I don't know what's going to happen.
Thank you. We're going to go with the last quick question. And so we go back to Bear. So just very simply, very quickly, what is the biggest problem for adoption in Web3? What needs to happen for Web3 startups, projects, and apps to reach the masses?
I think Apple to come up with their wallet, and potentially 1 or 2 really groundbreaking use cases in travel, and then we are almost there.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to beat the dead horse, just giving people a reason to give a shit. Like, and that all comes back to use case. Like, why would I choose to engage with something that's complicated, perhaps dangerous, ripe with scams and opportunists, when I don't have reason to do so in a way that materially makes my life, or in this case, my travel experience better? So providing that use case is ultimately how we get there.
Right, thank you. Cynthia.
So my really quick 2-part answer. Definitely the wallets. I think that's probably the biggest deterrent. If my mom can't use it, not gonna happen. But she can use an iPhone, so I think that's kind of where we need to get to. But I think philosophically, and maybe this kind of picks up on what Maksim is talking about, what does it even mean to have Web3 adoption, right? Is it Expedia that has a Web3 wallet that's maybe like semi-custodial? Or is it, so everybody has a non-custodial wallet, but they don't know because the technology and the experience has come so far. So I think even like this question of what does Web3 adoption mean, we have to define it. And if we're okay with like some centralization, but as long as the technology is out there, then that's fine. Or if like we want to go the full sort of like idealistic direction and say, oh no, it has to be everybody owns their own keys, otherwise, you know, we've kind of just built blockchain on top of Web2. Like, I think those are questions that we need to grapple with as an industry and as individuals.
Yeah, we definitely need to work on definitions. Web3 is too wide, and it means different things to different people. So yeah, we need to work on naming. Mike, what do you think?
You can start here with a new way. Sure. But no, I definitely agree. I think, you know, in terms of hardware, software, wallets, Apple is going to hopefully do that. But they're, I think, definitely going to launch an AR, VR solution, and I think that's going to make an impact into like the metaverse, if you will. I think cross tech is going to happen as well when it comes to like generative AI. So like from a travel corporate perspective, if I look at it through the lens of some of our partners that may be exploring metaverse, for example, you know, it's cool, it's interesting, but then we could see more potential use cases coming because of generative AI. So if you look at, for example, 24/7, 365, always on virtual travel agents in the metaverse, let's say, right? That has access to all of the profile data, so they can do personalized services, personalized, you know, recommendations, so forth, help answer questions and whatnot. Align that with the pain point, right? So we obviously talked a little bit about post-pandemic pain point in terms of human resource capability. Well, if you can have, let's say, a TMC with over 400, you know, agents, and then reduce that down to 50, and then having an always-on travel agent that can solve the problem, you know, that can apply to airlines, hotels, and so forth. So I see there's a lot of potentials, but I think in terms of adoption, I think some of the simplicity needs to happen. I think education, inspiration, like, for example, this community, is going to be helpful as well. So there's a few things as it grows is going to be helpful, but yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
I go to a bunch of crypto conferences. Last time was last year, September, October, or something like that. I was in Berlin, and my experience was in the sponsor room. So I'm looking around. All the projects are about speculation, NFT, trading, NFT, that is speculation as well, some sort of trading, some sort of DeFi. And I literally, I was mean to people. I'm like, when are we going to have projects that people on the street are going to care about, right? And travel is that. I mean, a lot of people travel, and I'm trying to, here, I guess in the travel space, this is an intersection, but if I go to a travel conference, yes, Web3 can solve certain problems there, right? If I go to crypto space, they have no use case for normal people, you know, for people on the street. And I'm telling them like, hey, there's a real use case and we can cross this and create something meaningful. It's ungrateful, I guess, work, right, that I'm doing here. But anyway, use cases. We need in crypto. We need those use cases because yes, there is no reason for a person from the street on the street to create a wallet. And then even if they do right now with current wallets, I mean, I have like 5 different wallets. Every time you send a transaction, you're like, okay, let's verify. If one digit is, if one character is off, you're totally screwed, right? So, and it's a stressful experience every time. I you know, like as fewer times as possible, I try to do that, you know, interact with the blockchain. I mean, that's the reality right now. And I've been in this space for a whole bunch of years, right? And again, the security about it, I mean, some people can get very paranoid and like, okay, let's turn off the Wi-Fi, let's disconnect the computer before you do the transaction or before you do something with your seed phrase or something like that. Look around. There are no cameras here. Okay, there's a bunch of cameras. No, I'm not going to do that here, right? So yeah, stuff like that. So absolutely crazy and not useful for. And I'm hoping that Ethereum community specifically, and I'm going to speak in just shameless self-promotion. I'm going to speak in Prague June 9, 10, 11. ETH Prague is the name of the conference. Vitalik, founder of Ethereum, will be there. Stani from Aave, the biggest DeFi protocol. Some other friends are going to be speaking there. It's going to be interesting. I'm hoping for that conference for some companies to come up with wallets that will be able to set up very easily, to not, dread, did I lose my seed phrase, or where is it, or what's happening with it, and stuff like that, right? Because again, right now, people go nuts. People have stainless steel capsules where they put their seed phrase, so God forbid it's, It's a good ledger plug. Yeah. So anyway.
Cool. Thank you so much. Maybe it's a good time for a hackathon for travel.
There is a hackathon around that conference in June, so why don't you apply? Why don't people who are here?
A whole one travel specific to get use cases. Maybe is it a bit too early for that?
How about we gather in Prague around those days, and there is a hackathon, win some. I mean, we can build some. June 9, 10, 11.
It's a big one. It's the.
I'm judging the hackathon, so
so we win. All right. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. It was great. Thank you.
you.
Thanks.